Hello again, this is Michael Broussard, author and performer of Ask a Sex Abuse Survivor, an interactive theatrical show about my experiences as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. Today I'd like to talk about another coping mechanism that I've found very helpful. Once again, I am not giving advice, I am not a medical professional, I am not giving medical advice, I'm simply sharing my experience. The concept I'd like to talk about today is something called releasing the outcome. Now, I first encountered releasing the outcome as part of my theatrical and creative performing training. I would write original material. For example, I would write a monologue or a story, and I'd go on stage to tell that story or perform that monologue. And while I was writing that piece, I would look at what I was writing and say, okay, here's the spot where they're going to go, ooh, ah. Here's the spot where they're going to laugh. Here's the spot where they're going to clap. And I'd have pre-planned in my head the way I needed that audience to respond so I would feel like I had succeeded. And I'd go out on stage and I'd do what I needed to do and I'd perform my piece, but they wouldn't respond the exact way I hoped them that they would respond. I wouldn't get all those points exactly the way I'd planned them out in my head. And I'd walk off stage feeling like a failure. And often I would collapse into depression. I would feel like I had no talent. I would feel like I had no reason to continue creating. And I wouldn't create for a very long time. And I would, walk around feeling like, what's the point? Eventually I'd drag myself back up. I'd write something new. Again, I would plan out all those spots where they were going to do this. And this time they were going to do it for sure. This time they were going to react exactly the way I wanted them to react for sure. And I'd go on stage and I'd do my thing and they wouldn't react in exactly the way I wanted them to react. And I'd walk off stage deflated, depressed. I'd fall down into that hole again. I'd feel useless. I'd feel pointless. And I'd give up for a long time. Now, the idea of releasing the outcome has to do with not planning out those moments. Has to do with not saying, okay, they're going to do this, they're going to do this, they're going to react like this, they're going to give me this, they're going to say this. The idea of releasing the outcome has to do with saying, okay, my goal, my end goal is to go up there and perform my piece, to do what I'm going to do. And that's success. I've gone up there, I've done it, that's success. And the fascinating thing for me was when I started releasing the outcome before performing, I'd often find that I was seeing other moments that my mind had blotted out that were incredibly successful. Because these were moments that I couldn't have anticipated. These were moments of them reacting differently to what I did in different spots, in different ways. So I had been missing out on all of this positive success because I decided this is what people are going to do. Well, the reality is that we can't control what other people do. While we were on tour with Ask a Sex Abuse Survivor back in 2015, we would often have conversations with the audience after the show was over. During the show, we'd have conversations, but often after as well. And in one particular conversation, while we were all sitting in the theater, this woman, this older woman, she says to me, I've been trying to tell my mother about the abuse, about what happened to me, and I've been trying to tell her about this since I was a little girl. And every single time I brought it up, my mother has changed the subject, and I've stopped talking because she obviously doesn't want to hear it. So I'm not going to talk to her about it. But I need to tell her about it. I so desperately need to tell her about it. And this has been happening with this woman over and over again, decade after decade after decade after decade. As an adult, she tried to tell her mother. Her mother would change the subject. She would stop talking. The woman would stop talking. Now, as I said before, the reality in life is we can't control what other people are going to do. We can't control how they're going to react. And so I said to this woman, there's this concept called releasing the outcome, which I have applied to my creative stuff. And certainly I applied to Ask a Sex Abuse Survivor here and performing it. And I'm wondering if that concept would help you at all. Because what is it that you ultimately need to do? What is it that you need to do? Well, she said, I need to tell my mother about the abuse and about exactly what happened. Okay, you need to tell her that, right? So, that's your end goal. So if you go in saying, I will have succeeded if I tell my mother, then success is possible. And you know what? When you talk to her, and you say, I want to tell you about this thing and this abuse that happened to me. And she tries to shut you down or change the subject. You don't let her do that. You continue to talk about it. You tell her about it. She may get uncomfortable. She may try numerous times to change the subject. But you know what? Don't let her. Tell her about it. Say everything that you want to say. And when you're done, you will have done what you wanted to do all along, which is tell your mother in detail. Don't let her actions control you. You can't control her actions, but you can succeed because you've released the outcome, because you have allowed whatever is going to happen, because the only thing you can control is what you do. You've done what you set out to do, and now you've succeeded. Now, like I said, that concept has helped me a lot in my life. Certainly, there are people in my family who I needed to tell about what I had been through who didn't want to hear it, who still don't want to hear it. There are people in my family who I was surprised how supportive they were and the unusual or unexpected ways they reacted. Friends, going and doing Ask a Sex Abuse Survivor itself was an exercise in releasing the outcome, because I was so terrified of people coming to the show and trying to tear it down, or people trying to punch holes in what I was trying to say, or I tried not to create like, well, they're going to do this or they're going to react that way. And the fact that I released the outcome meant that I could continuously tell my story without feeling like a failure, because I've told my story. My goal was to tell my story. I went and told my story. So like I said, that's been very helpful to me. It may be helpful to you. I'll talk to you again soon. Thank you.